Hello, everyone, and welcome to this ContentWise webinar on the Personalization Toolkit and the 5 metadata capabilities that every Netflix competitor needs. My name is Kauser Kanji, and I'm the editor of VOD Professional, which, as you may know, is a website that analyzes and writes about the online video industry. We've been working in the on-demand industry since 2005, and I'm a former head of online at NBC Universal. I also looked after the technology roadmap at Virgin Media in 2010. I'm joined this evening by Pancrazio Auteri, who is the current CTO of ContentWise and used to be the Director of Product Management, Content and Metadata at TiVo. Pancrazio, would you like to say hello?
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Kauser. Yeah, today we're talking about well-managed metadata and how they help to grab opportunities in online entertainment services.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Pancrazio. I'm going to hand over to you properly in just a moment. The presentation is going to last about 45 minutes, and then we'll take questions at the end. And really, as Pancrazio just said, it's about metadata. We all know the importance of metadata when it comes to presentation and content discovery, but how does it relate to personalization? That's what Pancrazio is going to be talking about, well, this evening in European time, this morning to our American listeners. Pancrazio, over to you.
Thank you, Kauser. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. So today, as Kauser said, we will talk about well-managed metadata and understanding if you are affected by poor metadata and if these things affect your area where you work in the organization, and some ways to make things better and some ideas that we share from the projects we did in our customers. So the most common message we get from editorial teams and people in our customers are that metadata is a lot of manual work. They talk about long sessions in front of Excel spreadsheets by filling the gaps and correcting problems in metadata and then asking developers to re-ingest corrected data. So metadata are really cumbersome sometimes and full of gaps if the complexity of the data beneath the services is increasing and the tools are not following this evolution. And metadata we are talking about, for people that is not familiar with the details, are of many different types. So I've listed here 4 types called descriptive, timeline metadata, technical metadata, and commercial metadata. Just to have examples, for descriptive metadata, we are talking about titles, synopsis, duration, type, topics, cast, crew, and so on, but also country, languages, and images. For timeline, scene level tags, start or closing credits, actor, character in scene, and product placement are increasingly becoming popular in projects because, for example, for binge viewing, the start of closing credits is very important to start or propose the next to play video right when the closing credits start. For technical metadata, we include schedule times, channels, duration, resolutions, HD, SD, 4K, encoding profiles. If a profile is not available, that content shouldn't be available on a specific device because it's not playable. Channel lineups, backend systems, and so on. And commercial, of course. So which business model, SVOD, TVOD, advertising-based, or prices, adaptive pricing, margin, constraints on availability, and so on. These are all metadata that are managed by several systems in the modern services. And talking about areas impacted by metadata, obviously metadata are very visible in the user interface. Poor metadata heavily impact personalization because recommendations don't work very well. So you cannot turn on the true UI autopilot that will optimize your business. And user engagement, of course, will suffer. But there are many other areas where metadata can be very useful. And if you have poor metadata or inconsistent metadata, you really cannot unleash the potential of the tools. For example, in analytics and audience profiling and viewership forecasting. Viewership forecasting is when you use the recommender engines to predict how many playbacks a piece of content will have in the future, not only to decide if you have to retire it from the catalog, but also when you have to license content to decide if which content to license that will be fitting your audience. So you need that analytics, audience profiling, and viewership forecasting are fed with good content metadata and user metadata in this case. But also advertising. If you want to do targeted advertising, you need to have a very good and consistent set of metadata that allow the systems to match user profiles with content and context, and so on. So as an example of user interface issues, we have the ubiquitous data gaps that can be solved with by handling a graceful degradation to fallback values. So in the metadata is clear which are the fallback values for each metadata field, so that when the UI doesn't find the value, the UI or the API, which is better, knows what to do and which metadata value to return to the client. Delayed enrichment. This is very common, for example, in EPG or when you ingest a data feed from an external source. So you need a fast lane to immediately publish the basic metadata you get with the original feed to the clients, and then when the enrichment happens, then incrementally republish the data to the clients so that the user experience gets better and better. We have a slide in a few minutes about this. Lack of links. A UI, especially a UI on a PC or on a tablet or on a phone, are more engaging when the user can navigate and click through the UI to quickly arrive to something to watch. And using a knowledge graph, you can generate links between content that are really increasing the engagement in the service a lot. This is what we see from the data. And then modification rights and publishing rights. Some data sources, they put some rules and constraints on what you can do with their metadata. So, for example, you have to lock data fields by source to avoid editorial teams to change metadata that the owner of the data doesn't want to change. For example, some content providers don't want you to change the description or the title. And publishing rights. So sometimes some data can only be used in certain context of the UI, for example, in a storefront that is under a specific brand. Personalization is also heavily affected by quality of metadata. So originally, with collaborative filtering recommendations where only consumption data are used, metadata were not really impacting things. But if you want to support personalization use cases, such as showing similar content or creating collections dynamically or personalized recommendations with explanations, it's very important to have good metadata. Otherwise, these use cases will not work. Same for related content, news topics. You need to have metadata that are consistent and high quality to have the systems to automatically pick the right content items and news elements for the user to populate the small real estate of the screen. And also for developing stories. Sometimes when the algorithm understands that the user is interested in a specific topic or in a specific story, even if that story is not anymore on the front page, you need to surface that story and news about the story to keep the user engaged or to send a notification and have the user come back. So metadata are very important. And another very, very, very important area where metadata can help, especially broadcasters and linear TV, is surfacing sports content by blending together live events, sports highlights, video clips, and applications and other things. And we have a slide about cross-domain recommendations for sports. Celebrity videos with good metadata. It's very easy to have automation in linking videos together, even without direct intervention of editors. And character-based is another important element for kids, because kids don't look at content as grown-ups do. Typically, they are very character-driven and very scene-driven. So having metadata about characters and scene level is very useful for kids' environment. Going specifically into UX enhancements, and very quickly on this. These are some reasons why you should care about use cases and in the UI. So next to play is creating playlists that automatically play and keep the user engaged. And we have seen that for some kind of content, you get immediately more playbacks, and if you are ad-based, you get more inventory for your ad business. And welcome back recommendations is for user coming back to your service, so where you surface the content that is more likely to be watched in that session. So we see that really the user clicks, so the conversion rate is very high. So shorter time to content is what you want to achieve. Similar or related content are very important use cases, because sometimes a piece of content that is well known to the user acts as the real query, the real discovery mean to get to other relevant content. So showing similar content, or in some cases related content, because there is some connection between the two pieces of content, is very important. And this can be done mainly because of metadata. And users typically have a better catalog perception, so they think your catalog is deeper, is of a higher value, just because you link things together. Because you liked it is a very common justification and very common explanation, and we found that putting some because you liked the use cases in the UI increased dramatically the trust into the recommender engine. And targeted promotion, once you select the content you want to promote, or the advertising or the product you want to promote in your service, by having a recommender engine to pick the right element to be surfaced in the UI leads to better conversion, and we are talking about 2 digits improvements. And then personalized email and personalized notifications are other 2 important fields where we are seeing increasing advantages in including personalization. And in personalized notification especially, we are seeing big value in contextualizing based on user habits over time. So personalizing not just the content in the notification, but also the time when you send the notification, because the system automatically learns when the user is more reactive to the notification. Another important element where metadata are really vital is search. And if you have a system with a single language, it can be relatively easy to achieve a very good search performance with metadata. But if you are in a multi-language environment, you may have your metadata core optimized for a single language. For example, you can have all the metadata in English with keywords and so on. And you can have a very well curated reference dictionaries. But search must work in the UI language. So it's important that you link the UI words and the terms and all the other language-dependent elements in the UI to core metadata values. In this way, the algorithms can understand how to handle queries and how to respond to user queries. For example, just a very, very trivial example, if you have an action genre, which is defined in English in the metadata core, the UI can be in multiple languages. So this is very important. So let's take a look at how we can handle metadata in the 4 or 5 cases. First of all is when you want to blend multiple data sources, you have to reconcile a piece of data that is coming from an external data source with the same elements in your core metadata repository. So this means that in this list you see many data sources, and many of them are referring to the same movie, Avatar, that you already have in your repository. So the first thing is to create the links between the references in the external sources and the reference in your core data. And we normally divide the data sources in 2 big families, what we call data-only sources that provide a lot of information about content, but they don't provide any reference to actually consume the content, and other sources that really are catalogs of content you want to blend. So they bring offers. So it's very important to connect these elements together. In this way, you can go to the next step, which is enrichment, where you have multiple sources. For example, you have the first data source, which is the original content feed that provide a basic set of metadata. And then you have a second source that you licensed that provides deeper and richer and more connected metadata. Example of this can be a VOD provider or the EPG provider, and another source such as GraceNote or Rovi or any other local editorial source that provide richer metadata. So you have to decide which piece of metadata to put into your core to have the best quality. In this case, we take the duration metadata from the original content feed, because in our experience, we see that this comes from who encoded the content, so the duration is more faithful to what is really in the content. And then you take title, synopsis, and other metadata from the licensed source, because it's deeper and higher quality. And also for images, we are using the second source. Then you want to get a critic score, and you have an agreement with a third source that gives you, again, title, reviews, and so on, but you can decide to only take the critic score because this is what you want to show in the UI. And for parental ratings, especially for kids content, maybe you have an agreement with a fourth data source, and you take in 2 fields in your core repository, and then a fifth source because you have a significant part of your audience speaking another language, in this case French, and you have another company providing you information that are of higher quality in another language. So this is a way which is very common in the enrichment field, to blend multiple sources after having a reliable reconciliation stage. So another big problem that many of our customers had was to handle basic data when they arrive and immediately ingest and publish to the clients as they are. So they can populate EPGs and VOD catalogs, let's say almost in real time when the content is available. But then the data gets enriched, and for example with the blending that we saw in the previous slide. And then enriched data should be republished as soon as possible to clients, so that the clients get the richer experience and see nice images, and see the guest celebrities that are guests in a talk show, can see the which singer is gone into the final phase of a reality or talent show, and so on. And then after the show is aired, typically catch-up version is created. Video clips may be generated for dissemination on social networks, and additional metadata are available. For example, you can have frames from the real show, and also timeline tags for product placement when a specific celebrity appears in the timeline of a longer content, and closing credits for handling binge viewing. So these are all metadata that must be managed as soon as they are created, and the user experience must benefit of this enrichment and not having needs for manual intervention or maybe the next day updates to get benefit of this metadata. So another important thing is how we can move from fragments of data that are generated to a really big graph of knowledge, because this is a problem that is more common than it seems. So organizations are typically more capable of producing metadata than they are of handling them. So typically a large organization produces metadata in silos, and metadata are used sometimes in a very specific set of applications. So it's common to see that the website is more curated than the set-top box in the interface, simply because the editorial teams that work on the two applications are different, or the technology or the tools that they use are very different. Even the database backend can be different. So the content manager for the web or the iOS application is more is more sophisticated than the content manager behind the set-top box legacy system. So connecting data between them can bring a lot of benefits to the organization and to the service. So for example, in this slide, you see we have some movies and some TV series with some special organized in the typical hierarchy of episodes, season, and series. And then in another part of organization, we have gossip videos and clips derived from talk shows, full-length episodes. And then the talk show clip are correctly attached to the talk show brand, the channel brand, and the schedule. So in some applications, it's easy to go from the schedule to talk show clips. But what about all the other metadata? For example, the actors that we have for a specific movie, or another actor or celebrity appearing in an episode of a season of a TV series, or is interviewed in a special attached to a season launch or season pre-launch campaign. And then what about relationships between celebrities? For example, who is married today, and we can discover that the same celebrity was married to another celebrity a few years ago. How can we use this information? So we see in other set of metadata that these celebrities appear in different gossip videos. So it would be nice for the editorial team to set a requirement to say, in the related videos for the next to play, I want to use relationships between celebrities to link gossip videos together and keep the user engaged. So by feeding the machine with this information, this graph information that are collected maybe from different sources, the machine can automatically connect gossip videos or other kind of videos together and create playlists that make sense to the user and keep the user engaged for the viewing session. Same for going from a gossip video to a talk show clip. And on the left side of the slide, you see that we can also have additional relationships between movies. For example, we can define sequel, or we can see that some movies are part of the same franchise, for example, James Bond. And you can imagine what you can do through the celebrity featured in all of these movies when a movie is launched or something happens that refers to a topic that the movie is dealing with. Or spin-off, for example, if we find that a person has watched the entire season, then we can recommend a movie because it's a spin-off of a series or vice versa. So this is a way that if you give the machine this kind of graph, even if you attach this information one by one, the machine can really put information at work. One thing that we see is that all this information can be inconsistently tagged. So for example, we have some editors that tagged some appearance as interviewed in, or is actor of, or simply a generic appears in. So we see that some editors have been more specific and some editors have been more generic. But if we link these tags together, instead of retagging the entire metadata base, which is very expensive and time consuming, if we just create these links, which are semantic links, and we even add, for example, hosts as another appearance, and we extend this to other kind of tagging, for example, director, writer, and producer as being contributor or part of the crew of a content, immediately the system can understand that if you want to get all the videos and content where someone appears in that content, the system, using the semantic knowledge, can include also the other tags that were used. So inconsistent tagging can be fixed sometimes by adding knowledge to the graph, because what is seeming inconsistent at a global level may be consistent at a local level, or may be confined to a specific editorial team that was simply following some editorial rules that are different from editorial best practices adopted by another team, but they are consistent within the editorial team. So by giving this knowledge to the machine, can fix very big problems in metadata tagging and in also metadata acquisition from third parties. So this happens also in the types of things you deal with. For example, actor, athlete, and musician, they have in common, they are all persons. And another tag, quarterback, can be easily be reconducted to being an athlete or a golfer or something else. Same for a rapper that is a musician. So it will be easier for the machine to perform queries and return the results you expect if we tell the machine that these tags have relationships within them. The same you can do with music labels, band, and charity. They are all organizations, and person and organization are all agent entity that can perform actions or can be owner of something, so the machine can understand the relationships between things. So apparently inconsistent tagging can still generate global value. So no retagging is needed, only a better understanding of the knowledge that is within the tagging. This is an example of what we did for sports. There were many buckets. There were buckets coming from EPG, a bucket coming from VOD assets, a bucket coming from an external company providing excitement factor, in this case was TUS, for matches, and other information about sponsorships from commercial information. We put everything together, and then it became very easy to connect EPG events to teams or to associations or even to tournaments. Think about everything about World Cup. That can be data can be very scattered across your data sources. And with this semantic reasoning, it's very easy to give the user different views, and the user will choose to start from any of the navigational entry points, and from that point you can bring the user to other places simply by linking or putting information in context. Another big help comes from semantic sources dealing with geographical places. So the fact that you can have inconsistent tagging movies, for example, a movie can be tagged to be in Paris, a movie can be tagged to be in London, or a movie can be tagged to be in Nice or Marseille. If you are looking for a movie set in France, you will not get anything because there is no tag France in the metadata repository. But if you connect a city to the country, it's easier to ask for a movie set in a country, and the system will return all the content set in all the cities and all the geographical part of the country. For example, in this case, you can look at celebrities born in Liverpool, and you can look for celebrities that are English or British, or from Western Europe or from South America. It's easier to connect content items to concepts that we as human handle very intuitively, but for the machine, this knowledge must be set in the way of semantic graphs. So, for example, if you look at another catalog of books, you can see that a vegetarian home cooking book can be connected via its author, Linda McCartney, to Paul McCartney and the Beatles, simply because Linda McCartney and Paul McCartney are connected between the marriage relationship. Another very important element when you have the machine doing things automatically is validation. You want to feel confident that the machine is not, let's say, messing up with your data. So every time an automatic operation is done, a confidence score is generated by the algorithm. And if the confidence is above a threshold that we set, or a tuning system set, then that enriched data is published directly to the clients. But sometimes the machine generates a lower confidence level. So it will put that operation into a to-do list that will be put in front of a human editor. So the human editor can just validate the operation or simply edit and change the thing. For example, in the reconciliation, if the machine is using title to reconcile elements, title can lead to a lot of ambiguity. So the human will disambiguate the reconciliation and then publish that. The most important thing in validation is not just having the confidence threshold managed, but the machine should learn the correction that the human applied and then apply the correction to other similar situations in the future, of course using, again, confidence level for similar situations. And this helps a lot your editorial teams that will free up time to do more creative work and higher value work rather than just filling fields or doing data entry. One of the tools that you can use to do all of the above is a Knowledge Factory or any other metadata management system you can find on the market. So essentially, Knowledge Factory is handling all the data sources that you are dealing with and consolidating everything into a metadata core that you can query via APIs. And of course, the Knowledge Factory not only handles all the automated operations, but also provide interactive and visual editorial and operational tools to help the editorial team to not only process the to-do list that we talked about in the previous slide, but also to set the rules, the editorial styles, and the commercial and the business rules on how to handle data. And just to mention, we can talk hours about Knowledge Factory and its features, but and we invite you to come to IBC to see the Knowledge Factory at work. But just to give you a glimpse of what you can do, you can automate a typical workflow where you ingest data from the source, and ingest means adaptation to formats, adaptation to protocols to get the data, and also verification on the quality of the data you are ingesting into your core, and then reconciliation and deduplication to avoid to have multiple copies and multiple reference to the same piece of content scattered as across your metadata core, and then enrich. So what is really worth of being taken from the external sources and consolidated into your core. And in an enrichment also there is the addition of semantic elements, and then validate, and then consolidate for API calls, or even export from your core, for example, to be consumed by another CMS. So you can use Knowledge Factory not only to feed the recommender engines or just the metadata core, but you can also feed back the enriched information to your CMS, CRM, and other analytics and big data systems or business intelligence systems you have in your organization. I want to close this presentation with two more examples of how you can create value from very well-managed metadata. We have a lot of requests for cross-domain recommendations. What is cross-domain? Cross-domain is when you have multiple sets of information that are composing your service, the user experience. For example, one domain can be live events in an EPG. Another domain can be sports highlights that are on-demand clips that are available to your users, and applications. If you keep this in different areas of your application, normally users are not really discovering very well easily these different domains of application. But with a smarter recommender engine, you can have the algorithm to create contexts. And for example, a live event can become a context for video clips of sports highlight. Think about information pre-event or interviews or sports highlights after the event or during the event. And applications. Applications can be linked to a live event through many different relationships powered by metadata. For example, the channel or the organization of that sports event, or the sport itself, or a tournament, for example, World Cup, or the sponsor that has an application and wants to be put in context with the live event they are sponsoring. So this is something that is possible thanks to metadata that create links between silos of things that apparently they have nothing to share. Another very important element is when you want to improve the navigation of your UI. For example, you can recommend movies or other content by just putting them in a list and ranked by relevancy. The problem is that we observed is that this imposes a very high mind load onto the user, because processing each of these elements is very heavy, and there is no apparent link between elements. So the user doesn't have a clue about why the things are being put in the UI that way. So one thing that proved to be dramatically improving the results of your UI in terms of conversion and satisfaction of the user is to just group recommended content into collections that are dynamically handled by the system and can include editorial collections or promoted collections, is to show the collection to the user in a way that the user eye scans first the collections, and then when a collection is of interest for the user, then the user starts scanning the content in the collection. And the two big advantages is not only visual, but also cognitive, because the movies or the content in the collection has a clear link between the items in the collection. And this helps the user to take a decision in a shorter time. As you know, you only have a few seconds to really convince the user to watch something. We're talking about 60 seconds to get to a decision. So it's very important that the mind load is handled in the correct way. So this is what dynamic streams can do for you. And how this works, ContentWise, in this case, creates, looks at the available metadata and creates collections and permutation looking at all the possible values of the metadata, and then selects the collection that makes sense because they have enough content in them, and then profiles each collection looking at the metadata of the content in the collection, and then project each collection against the user profile and calculates a match score. So this means that you will have a score for each collection for user, and calculates this for each combination. And then when your API, when your UI, your client calls the API, the ContentWise API, you get a list of collections in a specific order that are supposed to be relevant for the user. So it's not just the content, but even the collection has a relevancy for the user. And this helps you to create a more compelling navigation, and the user is more keen to explore your catalog. So this was my last slide. For more information about Knowledge Factory, UI, Autopilot, and personalization, you can visit our website or contact us via email, or you can come at IBC, Hall 14, booth K05. We will be happy to give you a demo and then see how we can work together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pan. And just so you know, the rest of the audience, that we are recording this webinar and that the webinar will be available on demand afterwards for your viewing and listening delectation. We've had a number of questions through while the webinar has been going on. So, Pan, I'm going to spend the next 5 to 10 minutes or so just asking some of these questions that the audience has sent in. Starting off, actually, with a question from, and I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, Peter Sikos. From Huawei. And Peter asked something that you did touch on in your presentation, which is how to handle and unify metadata from different sources, e.g. operator metadata plus own library plus content provider metadata.
Yeah, okay. This is a very key activity. So what we do is we use some algorithms that are called genetic algorithms that will look at all the available metadata fields and will find the best combination of weights among the fields to find the highest confidence. So, for example, if you want to find out the same reference to avatar, for example, in the Grace Note database in the Netflix database, in the Netflix feed, and you don't have Netflix, for example, providing the TMS ID that Gracenote uses, you can use the fields that you have available, for example, titles, the country, the year, and other information, the actor array, to see how much the content references are similar. Of course, we don't use a clear match on this because, for example, in the case of the year, you see that sometimes the year is not the same because some source refer to the movie theater release, the theatrical release, and another source refers to the DVD release, the home video release. So it's very important not to rely on one or on a specific value of the field, but use an algorithm that can really find the best confidence in the matching. And then for low confidence, as we said, a human validation. But we have seen that with a good tool, you can cover 85% of the reconciliation with automatic approach, and only 15% are left for daily review of the editors.
So forgive me, Pan. I mean, I'm just going to step back in terms of the technology. Are these live feeds that you're getting from all the different metadata sources, or do you unify them in-house first and then place the algorithms on top of that unified silo?
So each source is get from the original provider every day typically, and then the Knowledge Factory has a staging area where the data are converted into internal format, and then that the algorithm can easily access, and then the algorithm runs on this staging area to find all the reconciliation. And then based on the enrichment rule, only the fields that are of interest are imported into the core metadata. So this is a two steps work.
Okay, and leading on from that, there's a related question actually from Dale Rochon, who's at AT&T Entertainment and Internet Services. And Dale asks, what are the challenges in automating metadata workflows throughout the media chain? What's the additional industry adoption of AD/ID? Can you explain what that is to us as well, please?
Yeah, AD/ID is the identifier for advertising, and there is an increasing adoption of AD/ID, but in our experience, it is not considered today as a common availability. So you cannot rely on AD/ID for global linking, but it's really one of the right way to go to link advertising to content and advertising slots, especially for other replacement and other usage that we envision that in 2-3 years will become very important. In terms of challenges, the challenges are type of timing. For example, the data are available in the system, but they are not available in the UI clients, and this is really a waste of value. So this is a big challenge, how to be effective in a timely fashion to get there. And the other one is inconsistent tagging. So when you get metadata from several sources, inconsistent tagging normally leads to two outcomes. One is spend a lot of time and money into retagging things, or not use the information at all, which is really a waste.
Okay, understood. And one other question that we've had as well is about, are you Pancrazio, are you aware of the uptake of personalization in comparison to search-based recommendations? Do you know, is there a preference for one above the other? Are they 50-50? Do you have any data on this?
Well, yeah, it's and search is a very important pillar of user experience. Of course, search depends on the device type, on the user habits, and also on the content type. So, for example, on TV, we observe that I have a backup slide on this somewhere. In search, you see, search is used in 3 or 10% of TV sessions, but this jumped to 18-25% of sessions on PC, tablets, and phone. So search is very important. The point is that search alone with just relevancy is not enough, because surfacing relevant content, relevancy is not is not always an absolute concept. Sometimes relevancy is more about the user context or the UX context. So what we recommend is to use search relevancy based on user profile, but also using relevancy boosters that are in context. For example, a show that is hot today may be irrelevant in a few months or weeks. For example, TiVo excels in this. TiVo always shows the hottest show when you type into things, and this was really from the beginning, so it's a very, very nice feature. ContentWise search can re-rank search results with a bias onto the user profile. So the user, if you return 10 results, we put the most relevant ones on top, not only because of the match on the query string, but also because of the match with the user profile and the context. For example, the device type or the time of the day. So search is very important, but personalization should be blended into search results. And the last thing, when the user comes back onto a service, what he sees or she sees is what is generated by the personalization engine. So there is no search there. So it's 80% of the clicks of the user are on the home page. So it's very important on how you welcome the user. So search is always a second choice for the user in terms of navigational style. So search is important, but what you do in the small real estate of the screen, especially in the welcome screen, is more important than search based on our.
And Pan, this is a question for me actually personally, that whenever you're talking about personalization in the industry, in fact, when you're talking about anything to do with online video, you have to reference Netflix. Who else is doing personalization well, in your opinion?
Hulu is doing very good personalization, even if Hulu has a lot of editorial control in their system. Look at the collections that they do; they are fantastic. But I think that companies that are doing personalization well, of course, are Amazon. There is Chili TV in Italy. BBC with My BBC project has started a very, very interesting project in personalization. And in general, I don't want to cite companies that I estimate that are connected right now in the webinar, but absolutely TiVo does a great job in personalization, and Cox did a very good job in personalization. So I don't want to really leave out of the list people that are not on top of my mind, but there is a lot of people doing very good job there. And looking at the data that cannot be disclosed but are there, really personalization is worth of putting the best people in your team on top of it.
Indeed, for sure. Okay, I think that's about it in terms of the questions that we've had from the audience so far. As I said, this webinar is being recorded, so you can listen to it again at your leisure afterwards. Pancrazio, if you could just remind us about where you're going to be at IBC.
Yes, we will be in Hall 14, booth K05.
Excellent. Well, look forward to seeing you there. Thank you very much, and thank you very much to all the attendees who joined us this afternoon. Thanks.
Thank you.